mine at the moment. Just
okay.
Connor would take his chance.
Well, here's an upside for you, Eric. Is somebody's microphones or speakers are really loud.
it's probably mine. Sorry.
That's right. Guilin is gonna start teaching. She's gonna start teaching the Paleo Hebrew and French to the French only speak. Are you aware there's 29 countries in this world that only speak French?
Certainement, je connais ça.
Sacre bleu!
It's all French to me.
There's a fellow by the name of Hugo Lamenton, Hugo of the Mountains, up in Quebec. He had made, you might see it when we did Sukkot up there, he made each one of the letters in a 6x6x6 cube and painted them the colors of the Mishkan pattern. And there was a teaching I did up there one time holding the letters, and it was very interesting. You know, I had you, Tim, look at the letters, and you looked at the Aleph, but when you're holding the letter in your hand in this cube, and it was written Paleo on one side and maybe modern and English or whatever, and it was like one of those little blocks you have when you're children, wooden block. It does something to your mind. It really affects your thinking. And he had, so all 22 of them with the Mishkan, with the chart colors, the colors that I use in the a very particular spectrum. That's another story. But what I'm saying is he had them painted those colors, and he had them up on a shelf, and we stacked them up and grabbed different ones for spelling a word. And it's interesting, just the tactile event of holding the letters affects something in your mind. But okay, so we're going to talk about something in Judges chapter 5 here for the next hour. If there's anything else anybody wanted to engage with this particular moment, go ahead and say so. But
Next time you talk to Hugo, to pronounce his last name, think of the word when you say dang nabbit. His name is Montagne, like dang, Montagne, right? It's not Montagne or whatever, it's Montagne.
La Montagne, La Montagne.
Or for the younger guys, you could say Wu-Tang.
I tried to say Hugo La Montagne.
Yeah, that's the one, that's it. That worked good too.
Go ahead and jump into Judges 5. I don't know, the dog's out in the driveway there. Somebody last week made a comment that having dogs barking and roosters going off and crickets or whatever else they are is a bit distracting. That they thought we were doing it on purpose, kind of mocking the subject matter. It's just.
Are you kidding?
What's that?
Are you kidding? Where did they make that? I didn't see that comment anywhere.
Yeah, that was a comment. And
well, they don't realize you live on a farm, right? Or an ark, I guess, depending on how you look at it.
yeah, but I think it might have been St. Joe that said that. But anyway, we live on a farm, and there's other creatures with voices around here. Anyway,
Sorry for the noise in the background. Then do the best we can.
yeah, let me open up here to Judges 5. In Judges chapter 10, verse 12, there's an interesting thing. If you read through all Judges, we'll get to that in a second, but in verse 12 it says, the Sidonians and Amalek and Maon oppressed you. This is Yahuwah speaking to Israel. And you cried out to me, and I saved you from their hand. But you forsook me and worshipped Elohim Achrim. That's the gods of others, as it's translated here. Therefore, I shall not continue to help you. This is Yahweh our Elohim telling us the way the universe works. Go and cry out to the gods that you have chosen. Let them save you in the time of your distress. Verse 15, the children of Israel then said to Yahweh, we have sinned, May you do with us whatever is good in your eyes, but rescue us now, this day. Then they removed the foreign gods from their midst and served Yahuwah. And this is the critical sentence. Then his spirit could not tolerate the travail of Israel. Think about that. This is what's driving human history. This is what's driving human culture, economy, the narrative of human wars. This is what's driving, if we were to read these 22 letters as if they were a flow of human history, which is another way to read it. Right here, Judges 10, 12, and 13. You go back to the very beginning, and Yahuwah noticed that Abraham had a propensity for teaching. And Yahweh says the reason he chose Abraham is because he knew that Abraham would teach his children. And the Torah is what's taught. It means to teach the instructions. That's Torah. More is a teacher. Torah is what is taught. It's translated law, but it's just the way things work. If I teach you about grammar, that's the law of how to write and speak and communicate. If I tell you about chemistry, that's the way things are composed together and put together. If I teach you about arithmetic, that's not just the order of how to count, but it gets into the way that, well, if you get into the Fibonacci sequence, and gosh, it's why and how things grow, why trees look the way they look. I'm looking at a forest out in front of me here. Physics, psychology, biology, everything works according to a certain system and order that Elohim built into the universe. And when he realized that Abraham was such a person who had a propensity, and he knew that that would be carried through his family genetics, that the family of Abraham would teach. That's why he chose Abraham. So Elohim is about teaching. He wants us to share information. That's why the family of what became known as the sons of Abraham specifically branched off with Isaac, and specifically branched off with Jacob. And then the teachers in particular were the Levites. But then you had the divided kingdom, Ephraim and Yehuda. But it's all about teaching. It's all about sharing information. The word Mashiach, Messiah, we mentioned the other day, Mem Shin Yod Chet. Mem is a prefix, means the one who, the time of, or the place at, or the tool by which. Shin Yod Het is the word that's in the dictionary, communication, conversation. There's other derivatives, including Shin Het, which might mean destruction, but the idea is that the Mashiach, the Messiah, is the one who communicates. There's the word. So when the Israelis over in the land of Israel right now claim this fellow, this 30-something-year-old guy is the Messiah they've been looking for, what do they mean by that? It's not the Christian mind. It's a different definition. So is he a Messiah? I don't know. What's a Messiah? A Messiah is one who saves, ordained, anointed to do some kind of job of swimming. Shin Yod Het means to swim. So a Mem Shin Yod Het is a place to swim, like a pool or a ditch. Literally, that's what it means in the dictionary. The idea that Israel was chosen by Elohim and given the truth, the emet, by Elohim. Israel was made aware of certain realities about the way the universe is designed and built and functions. And then Yahuwah said to Israel, now you go teach everybody else. If they want to be one of you, part of you, as a proselyte, as a sojourner, great, but there's only one Torah for the native born as well as for the proselyte. One Torah. The native born is no better, has no other rules, not a different set of instructions. So the whole idea of what's called nowadays the Noahide laws is fake, is not real. If you're a Jew, you have a certain set of rules that you can regard the Torah, and if you're a goy, you're an infidel, you're a stranger, you're a heathen wanting to eat the scraps from the Jewish table, then you get the Noahide laws. That's not Torah. That's not legitimate. One Torah. That's what I read in the scripture. Then Yahuwah said to Israel, as long as you walk in my ways, which are justice and righteousness, truth and kindness, as long as you walk in my ways, the blessing is all yours. Prosperity is yours. You will ride on the heights of the earth, as it was said. All the best is for you. And when you, and to the degree that you profane, that you distort, that you abominate yourselves and abominate the words of truth to make them perverse, twisted, deviant, you will then suffer the repercussions of your deviancy upon your own self, upon the destruction of your own flesh, your own family, your own mentality, your sanity, your finances, your culture, and the very kingdom will be pulled out from under your feet ultimately, and you thrown into the dregs of captivity as slaves, and ultimately become the scum of the earth that everybody loves to hate. And that is what happened in human history. The interesting thing about the book of Judges, if you take the first 5 books of the scripture, Genesis, and I say this because some people don't know, Genesis is where we get the word Bereshit in Hebrew. It's the first word of the book of Genesis, and the word Genesis is where we get the word genetics and generator and genealogy, which is how you start something up and going. Bereshit is the first word. The book is in Hebrew called Bereshit, and it literally is translated to mean in the beginning. But in English, it's the word Genesis. Exodus is about the Exodus where Moshe and 3 million Hebrew Israelites and proselytes, sojourners, those who left Egypt with them, turned their back, abandoned their life as slaves in Egypt, and went into the promised land. The book of Numbers, actually the book of Leviticus was next. The first word in Hebrew of the book of Leviticus is Vayikra. Va is a prefix letter, Vav. Yod is a prefix letter that means he will. Then Kuf Resh Aleph, Kra, is the word that means to be called. So the first word is translated in Leviticus 1:1, Vayikra, and he called. But the word Kra, Kuf Resh Aleph, means to be called or invited or summoned to a meeting where you can learn to read the scriptures in Hebrew. So these videos that we're doing are essentially Vayikra. It's an invitation, it's an offer to allow you to comprehend and know how to read the scriptures in Hebrew. And you can answer the summons, answer the invite, or not. You can put whatever effort into it you want, but one of the ways to learn to read Hebrew is to do exactly what Tim did and take a week just staring at the shape of one letter. That's starting to learn to read Hebrew. For Tim to now comprehend something about the Aleph being the heart of Elohim is a giant step towards literacy. Literacy. knowing how to read. Every time you see that letter A, Aleph, Alpha, the heart of Elohim projected towards a specific determined goal, which is drawn as the X shape or the Tav, the 22nd letter in the distance. Aleph, Tav. As I've planned, so shall it be. As I've purposed, so shall it come about. The word that comes out of my mouth will not return to me void. It'll accomplish whatever I set it forth to do. First and last. He knows something about Aleph that he didn't know before. When Israel betrayed the Elohim referenced by these 22 letters, it says in Judges that not only was it that perhaps Elohim allowed or sent, but it was the action of the Israelites themselves which opened the door and whistled for, called in the enemies. Imagine opening the door and calling the enemies in. When Israel turned their back on the identity of the Elohim represented by these 22 letters, they themselves opened the door and called for demonic oppression, both in the spirit realm and in the realm of the carnal flesh, where there were robbers and murderers, liars, bad political officials, ravagers of their economy, and bad food to eat. Every human malady, the Pandora's box, Greek legend, when that box was opened, 50,000 demons escaped and brought all the ills to humanity. That's what this is about. Yahweh says to Israel, you forsook me and worshiped the gods of others. Therefore, I shall not continue to help you. So he's saying, cry all you want. I'm not going to help you. Go call to the gods you chose. So for me, for us, here in 2021, to say, wait a minute, Christmas and Easter are gods of others. They're not Yahweh. Yahweh had given us in Leviticus 23 the Sabbath day and 7 Moedim. Sunday and Christmas and Easter and Halloween are gods of others. For us to turn to these words and turn our back on those cultural inheritances that we picked up plays into verse 15. They removed the foreign gods from their midst and they served Yahuwah. Why are we doing this? We're not bashing Christians. Why are we doing this? Because of the next verse. So that Yahuwah's spirit could not tolerate our travail. You see, he doesn't care if we cry if we're not looking to him and regarding his words. Once we turn our heart to his words, then it'll break his heart when he hears us cry out. So whether or not there's dozens or hundreds or thousands or millions of people in America or any other country around the world who gives a rat's patootie whether Yahweh appreciates his own Sabbath day or his own Moedim, we determine too. Why? To save the world. That's why. Not just save the world, but to save Israel, but to save ourselves, to save our families, because Yahweh will not listen to our cries unless we remove the foreign deities from our midst and serve. That's Obed. That's the word worship, which is also the word obey, as in Obadiah, as in the word obedience. Obed Yahweh. So how many people are going to do that? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'll do it. Anybody else who has an interest can do it. This is an incredible voice. Yahuwah sent in. It says in another place, the Piratzim, the pirates, the ones who break things, Peretz, break things because they have no regard as to their value. He said he was going to find the worst, most vile, most violent, most ugly, most terrible, ruthless people on the face of the earth and bring them in to attack his dear, beloved Israel. That's what Yahweh said he was going to do. And that's what the various books of the Old Testament are about. Leviticus sets up telling you what's going to happen, and then Deuteronomy, Numbers tells you what, Numbers in Deuteronomy and Leviticus are telling you what was transpiring during the 40 years and different events. And then Deuteronomy is at the end of Moshe's life. He's about 120 years old, and he's now given an overview. Duet is where you get the word two, or the second. So this is a rehashing, a replay of basically an overview of everything in the book of Deuteronomy. So you look at the fifth book of the Torah, and it gives you kind of an overview of the other four. And then it gets into the book of Joshua, who took over after Moshe died and brought them into the promised land. And then you get the book of Judges. And the book of Judges gives you an overview of a few hundred years, basically about another 400 years, that bring you into the book of Samuel, which then brought you into King Saul and then King David. So King David was approximately 1000 or 900 BC, and Moshe is about 1500 BC. So you got about a 500-year span between Joshua and Judges. So everything that happens in the book of Judges says Yahweh had favored his people. They had things going good, but then they went after specifically two offenses, Baal and Ashtoreth, Baal and Ishtar, the fertility goddess of spring, Ishtar, and the sun god worship, Baal. Well, the word Baal actually means Lord or Master or husband, and it was the representative title like Lord of the Flies, Baal Zebub. Zebub is the word for fly. There was a book called Lord of the Flies. It was written back when, but Baal Zebub, that's the name of the devil. It means Lord of the Flies. What I'm saying is that there's different Baals, the Lord of the mountains, the Lord of the water, the Lord of the harvest, the Lord of this or that. They'd micromanage. Like breaking up the year, the Saturnalia and Samhain, Christmas and Halloween, and you got these different deities breaking up the months of the year. The point is, what became Christmas basically was the sun god worship, and what became Easter is the fertility goddess worship, and the two are related. The reason why the Orthodox have red colored Easter eggs is all tied together. Michael Rood talks about it. Jim Staley talks about it. Lou White talks about it. You can do the research and find out. Now we've got the internet. There's no excuse if you want to know what's going on. But the point is, they were a great distress and disturbance to Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel. And whether or not the various people groups scattered around the world should have paid attention or had a disregard for those matters, certainly Israel should have had a disregard of those matters. But for Israel to inherit from previous generations a fondness for and a love of their deity in the name of those celebrations is what caused all the trouble. It's just wrong. So I could look at the United States of America and say, well, why are we engaged in conflicts all around the globe? Why are we engaged in various conflicts domestically in the land? whether it's economics or whether it's a COVID virus or whether it's bad government or whether it's you had put up, Kurt, a couple of weeks ago, pictures of the what was it, as it were, called the gates of hell. You know, those that architect, that arch. Doesn't matter. As soon as you open the door, it allows all these things in. You open the door and all them in.
It was the Arch of Baal, and the interesting thing that I forgot to mention in that video was that the ISIS had burned the thing to the ground. Like it doesn't exist in reality anymore, and then we go and resurrect it with computers. Isn't that just absolutely insane?
3D modeling. Yeah, well, the thing is,
Hollywood.
America has done terrible, horrible things. Oh, yes, but America has done some wonderful things. But America continues to do terrible, horrible things. And all I'm going to point at is what we ought to do. Remove the foreign gods from our midst and serve, obed, worship Yahuwah. How do you do that? So I can sit here and like the Michael Rood had done that talk, the Jonah Code, and pointing out various sculptures and paintings and cultural behaviors over the centuries. Jim Staley did one called Truth or Tradition. I'm not going to spend any time pointing at the bad things. I'm going to say what we ought to be doing is what's represented by these letters. And in here, in this Mishkan pattern, is the 7 festivals of the. There's another one. That's not the same one as the that's Arch of Baal, but there was also the gates of Nineveh and the gates of Babylon. But anyway, that's another matter. What I'm saying is that the what we ought to be doing is what Yahweh wants, what Yahweh said, and so we're putting the effort here, saying, well, what does He want? Go out and cry to the gods that you have chosen. So I suggest that the God of Jesus Christ is not the same thing as the Elohim represented by the Shabbat and the 7 Moedim of Leviticus 23. And I can say that it's not the same because the ones who worship Jesus Christ as their God have no regard for the Moedim. And the word Moedim means witness and testimony. So by the witness and testimony of those who have a regard versus those who do not have a regard sets up a contrast, a distinction, an opposition, not a blending. This isn't being a Jewish Christian, a Messianic Jew, or bridges of peace between the two nations, or the two religions. This is what is Kadosh versus what is an offense to Yahweh or Elohim. That's Elohim Achrim, gods of others. Okay, so how do we find what the truth is? So here, let's just look at Judges chapter 5, an interesting matter. If we go to the end of chapter 5, verse 31, this is what's called the Song of Deborah. And it ends with this: so may all your enemies be destroyed, O Yahweh. And let those who love him be like the powerfully rising sun. And the land was tranquil for 40 years. So the actions of these particular people involved with this part of the story brought peace upon the land for 40 years. Why 40? Why as much as 40? Why only 40? Look at the beginning of chapter 6. The children of Israel did what was evil in the eyes of Yahuwah, so Yahuwah delivered them into the hand of Midian 7 years. The hand of Midian grew powerful over Israel. In the face of Midian, the children of Israel made themselves dugouts that are in the mountains, and the caves and strongholds. That's perhaps the caves of Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. They might have been dug out at this time. But look at that. The land was tranquil for 40 years, and the people of Israel, for whatever reason, decided to do evil in the eyes of Yahweh. Remember last week we were looking at, as it was in the days of Noah, Genesis 6, verse 8. I was going to elaborate a little bit about that. And it says, Vav Nun Het, and Noach, Mem Zadi Aleph, found Het Nun, translated grace, favor, or charming. Bet Ayin Yod Nun Yod, Ba'ayini Yahuwah. 5 words in that verse. Noah found grace. Noah found favor in the eyes of Yahweh. Let's look at that a little closer. Here, Judges 6, the children of Israel did what was evil in the eyes of Yahweh. So they got delivered into the hand. Yahweh intentionally gave them into the hand of Midian and made Midian get stronger and stronger. Well, remember, Midian was one of the children, or actually grandchildren, I think, of Abraham. So it's still in the family, the same family, one of the cousins, as it were. Moshe married the daughter of a priest of Midian. Midian is what's now what we call Saudi Arabia. Doesn't matter whether you're of the family or not. Sometimes the family members get very evil, vicious, mean, and nasty, painful. Children of Israel did what was evil in the eyes of Yahweh. The reason why we're talking about sitting down in Shabbat, learning the language, loving mercy and truth, is because in the eyes of Yahuwah, that's what he calls Het Nun, grace. The interesting thing about this verse 8 of Genesis 6 is that Noach is Nun Het and grace is Het Nun. Opposites of the 2 letters, Nun Het. Well, if you know what the letter Nun is, you look at it and it's shaped like a lightning bolt. And it literally means to engage in some kind of an action, whether it's a prefix or a suffix. The word Hannah, Hey Nun Hey, means behold, here, gladly. Whoa, hey, look at this. So this Nun is this action word, like jumping, like coming to life. A Het is a fence, which is a wall, which is a partition, which is an exclusion. Stay back. So it's kind of like the word Noach means running into a bam, running into a fence. But the word Noach, it was actually pretty funny, Kurt, you put up on the video, a plane coming into a landing. And then you showed that one photo where somebody was filming and plane hit a tree and toppled. Not funny for the guy in the tree, but in the plane, but it's like to bring something down and compose, rest in quiet, bring it down, just everybody calm down. That's the word Noach. But Het Nun is kind of the opposite. This is the other side of the fence where there's life. So for Yeshua to lay his life down dead outside the fence, be thrown into the tomb, so we can find life, I could read that into Noach and Ken. The kingdom of heaven suffers violence, Yeshua said. Well, that's this Nun outside the Het, a catapult against, throwing rocks against the wall, taking the ram and trying to blow open the gates of a city, an attack, a siege. Yahuwah said that those who are in his refuge are safe, and he will not allow them to be prevailed upon by enemy forces. That's a promise. So that there's life inside his Het. That's Het Nun. And we say, well, that's just the word favor and grace. Well, that's what the manifest of that is. Het Nun is also where you get the word Khan, Khan, like Genghis Khan. It's a warlord. It's one who has provisions for you. But remember, Hanini is also the word for daisy. And it's almost like Het Nun is a pasture of life, a field of daisies. So Noah found this field of provision, a meadow, in the eyes of Yahweh. What are the eyes of Yahweh? But the other way to read that is that he found what Yahweh is looking for. Yahweh wants to find humans that are like a field of daisies to him. What are Yahweh's eyes looking for? Emet and Chesed, truth and kindness. He's looking for people who will regard his ways, listen to his voice, to shema his call, to learn how to read Korah. That's what he wants his people to do. That's why we're making these videos. To find what is graceful in the eyes of Yahweh so that we can stop doing the evil that we've inherited through our generations, so that we can appeal to the heart of Yahweh and have him answer our cries of distress. Because only if we are walking in his ways and listening to his voice will his heart be appealed to, according to this scripture. There's an interesting thing. If you look at verse 10, actually it's verse 12 in Judges 5. We'll start off with verse 1 and 2, but let me just jump to verse 12. It says here in Stones Tanakh, give praise, O Deborah. Give praise, utter a song. Arise, O Barak, and capture your prisoners, O son of Abinoam. Now, just asking you, Mark or Kurt, or does anybody else have a different translation of that verse? Judges 5:10. I just want to make a point by showing you the benefit of doing this Paleo-Hebrew study. Judges 5:10. 12, excuse me.
5:12? Oh.
5:12.
It says, awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, utter a song, arise, Barak, and lead thy captivity captive, thou son of Abinoam.
Lead thy captivity captive. This says capture your prisoners. Awake. This says give praise. So which is it? Anybody else have a different one?
Okay, the NIV says, wake up, Deborah, wake up, break out in song, arise, Barak, take captive your captive, son of Abinoam. It reminds me of that movie, Captain, My Captain. Remember Dead Poet Society?
Take captive your captives? Capture your prisoners?
The TLV says, awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake, utter a song, arise, Barak, lead away your captives, O son of Abinoam.
Lead away your captives. What does that mean?
To lead them away. King James is lead thy captivity captive. I mean, that reminds me of that verse in Corinthians, put every thought into captivity.
So my point in saying this is here we've got perfectly good English, numerous translations, and yes, we know how to make those words in Hebrew fit an English definition, but we still have no idea what it means. That's the problem. So the problem with translating the Hebrew words into other languages is that we still don't know what he's saying. And I think that the benefit of looking at the Paleo-Hebrew and looking at Klein's dictionary, which helps, lets us see what he's really saying. And for whatever reason, I happened to look at this because I was looking at some stuff in Judges. And this song, Deborah the prophetess and Barak, goes back to chapter 4. It starts off, the children of Israel continued to do what was evil in the eyes of Yahweh once Ehud died. So look at 31, the end of chapter 3. After him was Shamgar, son of Anath. He struck the Philistines, 600 men with a cattle goad, and he too saved Israel. See, when Yahuwah says, I sent you many saviors, many Mashiachs, that's what this is about, these judges. It's called judges here, but they were basically saviors. And then chapter 4 is the setup for chapter 5 that we're going to talk about. Verse 3, Yahweh delivered them into the hand of Yabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. The general of his army was Sisera, who dwelt in Harosheth Goyim. The children of Israel cried out to Yahweh, for Sisera had 900 iron chariots, and he oppressed the children of Israel forcefully for 20 years. So we could read that as a story, but try to put some skin and bones on that skeleton. He had 900 iron chariots. That's like the Nazi Gestapo. They had horrible technology and weaponry and power that there's nothing the Israelites could do about it. And Yahweh allowed it to prevail 20 years over his people. And his people cried, and Yahweh said, go cry to the gods you preferred rather than me. La, 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 la. Can't hear a word you're saying. That's what Yahweh was doing to Israel. Is Yahweh doing that to America? Yahweh doing that to the Greco-Roman British Empire? Maybe. Wake up, O Deborah. What? The word Deborah means bee, B-E-E, like a wasp or a hornet. Give praise, O wasp and hornet. Wake up, wasp and hornet. Is that what he's saying? Barack, is that like Barack Obama? Same name? Capture your prisoners, O son of Abinoam. I don't know what that stuff means. That's the point. Every name means something. So this word is mentioned 4 times. Give praise or wake up. It's spelled Ayin Vav Resh Yod. Well, that word literally means to incite to activity. You know, there's a phrase I remember as a kid. Somebody's jumping around, hey, you got ants in your pants. Or you got a bee in your bonnet. Oh, there's a bee. There's a bee in the room. Somebody quick, open the door. Get this bee out of here. The word Deborah is a wasp or a bee. And the word Ayin Vav Resh literally means arouse, to expose, or to incite activity. That's what we're doing by these videos. That's what this whole Erictology study is all about. And the word Eric, Ayin Resh Kaf. This is Ayin Vav Resh Yod. It's the same root word. Kaf is a suffix, means you or your. So for you to be disturbed and incited to the activity of wake up is what this is about. Why should you wake up? The word Deborah doesn't just mean wasp or hornet, but it means utterance, because the root of the word is debar, as in the word Debarim, which is translated Deuteronomy. And the word debar means to speak or to say, or the terms as stipulated. It also means a barge or a raft carried behind a ship, like a trailer behind a truck, which carries cargo. It's a pasture or a plague of pestilence. In other words, it's the pasture promised, like the meadow inside the het of Yahuwah's favor and grace, but it's the pasture that's kept aloof on the other side of the het that Noah is looking for, because outside in the darkness on the other side of the het, in the land where there's trouble and tribulation and distress, because people have turned away from hearing Yahweh's words. And if you were born in the tribulation era, of the 20 years where Sisera ruled as the Gestapo over the Israelites, tormenting them, feeding them fear and terror, or if you were born during the 40 years of peace. It's not your fault, one way or the other, but we're just born in an era, and here we are now. And it's time to wake up to the stipulations that Yahweh gave our ancestors. Wake up, just like you would wake up if a hornet came into the room. I was in Israel, and there was some hornets as big as your little finger. Those guys were about 3 inches long. Maybe you can find a picture, Kurt. Brown and yellow stripes. They were hanging on this pomegranate tree that was right next to where we were sitting. It was at Sukkot. Man, those guys, talk about a vial. Man, they could inject a whole syringe full into you if one of those hornets decided to get you. It's like, why doesn't somebody spray some pesticide and get rid of those hornets? Well, there's a couple places in Scripture where Yahuwah said that the hornets are his secret weapon to chase the enemy who's hiding in the rocks, to clear out our adversaries. We've got bald-faced hornets up here. They're black and white, and man, those suckers will get you. They apparently they can think. They have facial recognition, and they can zero in on certain individuals. They remember who they're going for. The mind of a hornet is very interesting. So does this say, wake up, O Deborah, give praise, Deborah, give praise, Deborah? Or is this saying, wake up, incite to the activity regarding the stipulations that Yahuwah gave you as a people of Israel who are supposed to be teaching the Torah to the world and save the world from its dilemma, its calamity, the abominations which it has succumbed to by the liars and thieves and killers that Yahweh has allowed and actually sent to destroy the earth, like in the days of Noah, because the people of Israel turned to other Elohim Achrim and did evil in the eyes of Yahweh, rather than searching what he said to find the chen, the grace that's in his eyes. And the word eyes, ayin, literally means evaluation and determination. And it's a derivative. The word I is a derivative. That's ayin yod nun, is a derivative of ayin nun hey, which means to be occupied by, to answer, to sing, bowed down, busy, humble, afflicted, meek, humbled, and one who is burdened by the concern of, one who answers as his own heart says, oh, now that I know about this, I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to make it my concern. That word ayin nun hey and the word ayin yod nun are related words because it's an ayin and a nun. And an ayin is what you see, measure, calculate, determine, look well to, measure, calculate. It's very similar to the word bet yod nun, bina, understand, ponder. And the nun, engage in the action. So this word, blessed are the meek, Micah 6:8, you should know good what is man, what Elohim requires of you, O man, to do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. To walk humbly. Humbly is ayin nun hey. Walk humbly with your Elohim. Walk on his path, doing truth and kindness, and occupy yourself, burden yourself as one bowed down under a load of being concerned with what is Yahuwah seeing. How many years do we have left? Individually, we don't know. We could die today. We could die in 10 years. Maybe we have 40 years in front of us. But all those people in that movie, Human, how many of them know these words? of all those they interviewed, doesn't sound like very many. The human struggle is enough to distract you, and Yahweh gave Israel to be the family who would show them and teach them his ways in these words. And the church has abandoned, thanks to Constantine and the Vatican and the seminaries, they have abandoned the Moedim, the testimonies, the ways of Yahuwah. The adornments of Yahuwah has been abandoned by the church. Therefore, the treasure of his heart, in his eyes, the twinkle in his eyes for his people is left up to us to pick up and expose. To be bare, exposed, and aroused is Ayin Vav Resh. So if we go back through and read this entire chapter, starting at verse 10.
So you're in Judges now?
Judges 5.
Let me stop and hit record again.
Okay, well, yeah, okay.